Okay, so let's take a look at some domain and range on a graph. So it doesn't, I'm going to make this one perfect. It matters. So we have an x-intercept of -3 and a y-intercept of 3. And then we can draw that line, and it goes in both directions. So I'm going to label the x-axis and the y-axis. So we have a line. And the domain, you can say domain or just d colon. And then you can do it on the number line and just shade the whole number line. But let's do set notation and interval notation. So we know that x can be all real numbers because it goes in both directions and all directions, whatever. So XER. Now we're talking about x. So x vertical bar in front, x vertical bar in front, and then put some curly braces around it like we learned in the last section. Now interval notation, still domain, d colon whatever, and we go from -infinity to infinity. You can see in the notes a different way to write set notation. It's interesting. So range, we're going to say r colon. So now the range is talking about y. And y can go up and down in all directions. So we can say YER. Because we were talking about y, we have to say y vertical bar in front and put a curly brace around it. And the interval notation for that is exactly the same. So -infinity, infinity. Great. So domain and range for a line, XER and YER. If they ask you to do it on a number line, you just shade the whole number line. For the domain, draw an X, a horizontal, and shade it. And for the Y, draw a vertical and shade it. Whichever. Okay, so let's take this graph. The only part that matters is the L, so that's the only part that I'm going to graph. And we have the point 1, 4. I'm going to label the point 1, 4. I'm going to label the axis at 4. I'm going to label the axis at 1. And we have the point 7, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm going to mark 7. I'm going to put an open dot at 7, 1. I'm going to label the point 7, 1. And I'm going to put a line through it. I should have used a ruler, but I'm using a digital screen. I can't. So let's go for the domain and the range. So let's start off with d colon for domain. Now, in the diagram, use your hands. Go back to the last section or go back to grade 9 and learn to use how to use your hands. And think about it in words. Well, x goes from 1 to 7. So that's a between. We have to write it as a between. So we can say lower number, less than, variable. We were talking about x, so we have to put x. Less than, bigger number. Now, because we have a closed dot at 1, we have to say equal to below the sign. So now it says 1 is less than or equal to x is less than 7. And we don't put an equal to under less than 7 because it's an open dot. Now, we say we are talking about x. So we can say x vertical bar. We are talking about x. And x can be all the little points in between. So, comma, XER. And then curly braces around it. Now, that's set notation. Interval notation is a lot easier. So, interval notation, we know we're going to be doing domain still. So, x, so horizontal hands. Going from 1 to 7. So we say 1, 7. Smaller number, bigger number. Now we had a closed dot at 1, so we have to put a square bracket around the 1. We have an open dot at 7, so we have to put a round bracket at 7. Go look at the old notes and the grade 9 notes on inequalities. Great, so domain and range. Now we have to figure out range, so range colon. Now we're talking about y. Now what's y going to? Well, rotate the page or just rotate your hands and think y goes from 1 to 4. So smaller number, less than, variable, less than, bigger number. The y values going from 1 to 4. I'm going to put that on the y-axis. 1 to 4. Now, this time y is open dot at y is 1, so we don't put an equal to. But because we have a closed dot at 4, we have to put the equal to below the less than 4. So now it says 1 is less than y is less than or equal to 4. We can be all the points in between, so y-e-r. Curly brace, we were talking about y, excuse me. We were talking about y, so y vertical bar, making sure you can still see that 1, and curly brace in front. Okay, so little parabola. Well, the domain goes on in all directions, x, e, r, only. X vertical bar in front, curly braces in front and after. Or interval notation. It's going on forever in both directions. Negative infinity, lower number, infinity, greater number, round brackets. We can't include infinity. Range colon. Talking about y. Well, this time, turn your hands. Y can only be greater than the lowest value. So y only goes down to here. So y just has to be greater than the lowest y value. The y value is 0, so y is greater than or equal to 0. Then it's continuous, so y-e-r. Y vertical bar in front, curly braces after. Interval, I'm going to skip a line because those y's run down. Interval, lowest number, bottom, lowest number of y, 0. Highest number of y, comma, infinity. Including 0, square bracket. Not including infinity, round bracket. So again, go back to the previous section of notes or back to grade 9 to understand those a little bit better. But that's domain and range. Keep in mind, my graph was perfect earlier, and it is in the notes, and it should still be for you. Okay, a circle. You know what? I'm just not gonna do that because I like how the points are perfect above. Let's just leave it. Okay, let's take a circle. I'm gonna put the y-axis a little bit higher, and we are like this to that. I'm putting the outside points on first. This down to that. Excuse me. Down one more. I hope that's still, oh, I gotta move it up one, whatever. I'm just gonna put it there and draw it. Now, I know I go as far as -2 on the x, and I go as far right. Oh, I went a little bit too far. 3 on the x. And on the y, I'm going from -1 all the way down to what it would be down here. Let me just make sure you can see that. Good. So on the y, all the way down to -6. So off to the right, domain, d colon. Well, we're going from -2 to 3, so it's a between again. -2 less than x less than 3. We do have points on both sides, so they're both equal to off to the right. And we can be every point in between there, so XER, curly braces around, X vertical bar in front, curly braces around it. Interval is going to be a little bit easier, so lower number, -2, comma, bigger number. And because we have points, because they're equal to square brackets. Those are not points. Those are domains and range. So this time the range goes from -1 to 6. So I say -1 less than y less than lower number. Lower number. -6 less than y less than -1. Sorry. YR, we can be continuous between there. Curly brace, curly brace. Now I'm running into it, so I just have to write the interval in this box right here. And the interval notation for range is y is just going from -6 to 1. And we have good points on both sides, so it's equal to, so square brackets. So domain and range.